What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another edition of the Vicktory Life Legacy Spotlight. Today, I have a phenomenal guest in the building, a longtime friend and supporter of Victory Life, someone who I've had the blessings of working with and becoming close friends with, someone I respect immensely, Judge Jackie Lucas. How you doing?
Hi, hi, Vic. Thank you so much for having me on.
Oh, this is so great. This is a long time coming. I know our schedules have been tight trying to fit this in, but we finally got a chance to make it work. So I'm
Well, let
really
me just
happy
tell you
to.
this though. I feel special because I know what type of guests you normally have on the show. And I am not athletic at all. I try to be, but so I feel very special to even be asked to be a part of this. So thank
Oh
you.
no, no, it's special to have you. And you're right, we've had some great athletes. We've had Terry
Wow.
Kirby and a lot of great people. But here's the thing: we've also had some cancer survivors, and we've also had Principal Dr. Nichols, who's over at your alma mater, over at Unity Reed. Now you went to
Right,
Stonewall
right.
Jackson. We're going to talk about that as well. But it's great to have you because I've been very fortunate, along with people who see this interview, to be with you every step of the way since you arrived in Northern Virginia after you graduated from Central.
Yep.
And now you're a judge. But before we talk about the judgeship and the honorable role you have in Prince William County, we're going to talk about the day one days. We're going to talk about how you got to this point. So,
Okay.
for those who don't know, you are from Manassas, right?
Yes, I grew up in Gainesville before it's Gainesville, what people know today as Gainesville. I grew up when it was a 7-Eleven and a Christmas shop. So I don't know if people remember that, but it was country out there. So I went to elementary school in Gainesville and eventually went to what was formerly known as Stonewall Middle and Stonewall High. Now is it Unity Reed
Unity
and
Reed High School.
yep. So yeah, so I grew up local, um, and loved it. I loved it. Hanging out in Manassas Mall, doing all those things. But my parents were very strict, so I couldn't do a whole lot in Manassas. I had to kind of sneak and do that. I wasn't that bad of a kid, but I did do my dirty deeds as a young kid to get out and explore. But yeah, I love growing up around here.
So you say your mom, who I know, who shout out to your mom. We're gonna talk about her in a second, Dolores Lucas. But your mom and your dad were strict, like as far as like what were the rules? What was it like?
Oh my gosh. No boys at all. I couldn't boy over, no boys calling. And if I did have a boy that called, he had to bring his report card. It was very strict. I couldn't go to parties. I had a curfew that was like 9 o'clock. And you're talking about somebody who's a junior, senior in school. Come on.
A
Like it
curfew?
was, they were very focused on my studies and making sure my nose was in the books at all times. And there was a reason for that. But they made sure that I was very focused.
A curfew at 9 o'clock, even when you were a junior in school?
Yeah, I had to get special permission to like go
Oh,
out later. So having strict parents, I'm surprised that when I went to college, I didn't go wild out
yeah.
because I was it was very strict in my house.
You mentioned Manassas and Gainesville. Obviously, our close friends. We know each other for a long time. I grew up in the Tidewater area, and you know my wife as well, Shanice,
Yeah.
who
Mhm.
went to Stonewall, now Unity Reed High School as well. And when I met her in college, she would tell me when we became friends, eventually dated, that Manassas that I know of and Northern Virginia in itself, the whole region, with the exception of Alexandria, was not what we know today. Gainesville, Haymarket, Manassas, Woodbridge, it is not what we know now. Being that you grew up here and then you returned here after college, just for those who don't know, how was it? Like, I hear stories.
Back in the day, oh my gosh, yeah, it has grown so much. There's so many different people that are here. It's just the stores and just things to do has grown because before it wasn't like this at all. You knew everybody around the corner, everybody knew everybody. So if I was out and I wasn't supposed to, believe me, somebody would be like, Jackie was over at such and such. So they would tell you like, why are you here? So yeah, it was very close knit. Not that many people were here. To really get out, like a lot of times as I got older, we were able to go up to DC. So that was fun. That was
Yeah.
always good to go and hang out there. But there was not a lot of things to do. Even if we did have things to do here, it shut down for whatever reason. People started shooting or doing something crazy.
Shooting.
Yeah, we even had that down here. We had little clubs in Manassas over by Reb Yank. I don't know if you know over that area, but that used to
Only
be a little club.
only club I heard about when I was talking to Shanice in college was the China Oven or something.
Oh yeah, they used to have something. So yeah, it was really nothing going on here at the time. And so I mean, the best place for me probably was being home and focusing on my schoolwork and all that. But of course, that when you're that young, you just want to be out. You just want to be doing your own things. You just want to be with your friends. And so sometimes that was hard, and I got in trouble.
Oh, you did?
A little bit of trouble.
So, talk about, besides, the accountability and the structure and the rules, talk about your mom and dad. I know your parents, and it's no secret. I have a lot of admiration for your family. Your mom now is, overseeing my son, Isaiah, my middle child at Patriot. So I tell him all the time, I'm going to know everything. And then he
Yep.
also, his coach is a good friend of mine now. But talk about your childhood, not just Manassas and Gainesville, but you don't get to a place where you're at right now without having great parents and great family because you have not just your mom and dad, but your family, your grandmothers, and
Mhm.
just talk about what it was like growing up, the sense of family, and what you remember about your mom and dad and everything.
Yeah. So I have a very small family, but they're very, very close knit. So that was always really nice. On weekends, my great grandmother used to live in Maryland. So that's like an hour away. So we used to go up there almost every weekend. But what I will say, just back it up a little bit, and I don't think she'll mind me saying this. My mom was a teenage mom. So she had me when she was 16.
Mm.
So she was very young. And so she had to end up relying on my grandmother and my great grandmother to eventually get her education and to help raise me. So I was probably 6, I think, when my mom met my dad and got married and we moved to Virginia. So so she had a lot of family support. So we kind of maintained that family support with my great grandmother, my aunts. So we always remained very close with them. But the one thing that I remember is my mom absolutely finished high school on time. And it took her some time to finish college. So she would go at night while she was working. And I remember all these things. It took her a long time before she even got her associate's degree and then eventually went full time to get her bachelor's to get where she is today. So she's one of I love her. She's my hero because to have that kind of dedication and to keep maintaining, um, that's just such an inspiration for me. So, so for them, they wanted to make sure that I didn't go on that path, that I had everything that I needed to be successful at the time. Like so I wasn't getting pregnant. I wasn't out here just messing around with anything and anybody and doing anything crazy, but that I was focusing in on what I needed to do to be successful. And so they have always focused in and reiterated education, focus on myself, learn what I can learn. I don't have to, rely on all these other people. I can do what I need to do. My dad, who's a character, you know him, he used to have me outside, when he would when I would have anything going on with the car, if the oil needed to be changed, the tire needed to be changed, he had me out there. If anything went wrong in the house, like the toilet wasn't working, I was with him at where the toilet is trying to help fix it. So he always wanted me to learn and absorb everything, not just sit in front of a TV. So they always focus on just learning and getting something from everybody. So so I still take that with me,
Yes,
to learn and know what's going on around me.
no doubt. And yeah, you're right. Your dad is a character, but he's a great man. And both your parents are Virgos, Team Virgo. I love it. I love it. September babies. But no, that is cool. And you got, I can't say it enough. You got great parents. So you mentioned education, Jackie, and you talk about, how important it was for you not to fall and have those same mishaps. But truth be told, those mishaps for your mom made her the woman she is, and it gave her
Right?
life lessons that she still passes on to all the kids in the community now.
That's
And you're
absolutely
following that same legacy. So with education being, essential for you, how did it come about where you ended up choosing the University of Virginia, which is ironically our rival at Virginia Tech? But a great school indeed.
Wahoo! Yes.
You are a proud Wahoo. And
I am.
when did that come about? Because I mean, even back when we were young, and especially now, it is still one of the premier universities in the country. You just do not walk into UVA, even with great grades and
Yeah.
references. How did that come about? And before you answered that question, was that the choice school for you at first? You know, some people say, "Oh, this was my backup plan." How did that UVA come about? And you know, what made you choose them?
Well, UVA, you were absolutely right. It was a great school. And so I actually didn't have a real focus about where I wanted to go. I um I went on a bunch of college tours. UVA was one of them. Hampton, um, William and Mary. I went to a bunch of Virginia schools just to check them out. And the one that got me the most was UVA. I mean, it's just beautiful. They have, it seems like everything. They have the education, they have the sports and athletics, they have all these other like groups and committees and volunteer things that you could do. So I was kind of like, I really like this school. And then I found out that, this has got this great education. It's one of the greatest public schools. And I was just like, oh my gosh. I also went to Virginia Tech. I did go there. So I mean, but every school has its own different feel to it.
Yes.
Like when you go visit, it's got a little different thing. So so I was once I visited there and actually got to talk to a couple of the students during the tour and everything. I was like, I'm sold. I'm coming here. I gotta come here. So I worked with my guidance counselors to make sure I had the best package possible to send to them. And the good thing is, I got into quite a few schools, and I had to actually make a determination. And the interesting thing is, UVA has before you get accepted, they have a thing called Spring Fling.
Yes.
And if you're invited to go to Spring Fling, the thought was that you probably also got accepted into the school. So this was probably what sealed the deal. So I got into the Spring Fling program. So you actually get to go down for a weekend and hang out with the student and go to class with them and do all kinds of things. And so that just sealed the deal. So you think I went to class with them. I think they had an exam, and I found out that you could leave right after your exam. I was like, oh wow, you don't have to
Yeah,
stay.
yeah,
I was like,
yeah.
what? So you leave, we're going and hanging out at the black bus stop, the BBS. We were hanging out there. I got a feel for how it is at the school. We got to went to parties. There was a concert. So I think that sealed the deal for me too, because I felt like it had the education piece and it had also this fun piece to it. I met a couple people that weekend that I'm still friends with now. So that absolutely sealed the deal. And but I was scared because a lot of people did not get in.
Mm.
And so I was too excited to be able to get that letter that I got in.
Yeah. So when you finally get that letter and you go enroll in UVA, talk about your time at UVA. What do you remember most, and what was difficult, and share about some of the challenges you had. Sometimes we omit those because we
Right.
forget, or maybe you want to talk about it. But how was it for you?
So overall, my experience was great. I have lifelong friends from there. I got to learn such interesting things. My major was history and African American studies. So I had to write a thesis and all kinds of things, but I've learned so much by the classes that were there. The professors that I had, I mean, they were amazing. Um, so that was one of the good things, obviously, about it. The friendships that I made, what I was able to learn. I also learned that high school came very easy to me.
Mm.
But going to college, I thought I could do the same thing. Like I could just, I can read it right before the test or whatever. That ain't work. That ain't work. My first semester was terrible. I got C's, D's. And this is the
Really?
first time this is the first time I'm getting grades like this. And I was just like, oh my gosh.
First
So you
semester?
really, huh?
First semester?
First semester. And
That's
the first semester, the first year, you got to come out you got to be
yes.
good at it.
Hmm.
And part of that is also like the extra stimulus. I told you my parents were strict. So, when they having parties during the week and you doing this and you going on Rugby Road and all those other fraternity parties, now this is all new and I'm trying to like experience all the things I can experience. And so that's when you really have to learn a lot of discipline. So yes, I started off not so good. Me getting straight A's in high school didn't translate in college initially. And you realize that, what works for some people doesn't work all the time. Or what worked for me in high school doesn't work for me now. I actually had to sit down and study. I had to like dedicate that time all week to be able to prepare for whatever was coming up. So I had to readjust my study habits and skills and stuff. So that was very interesting. And to crawl out of a bad GPA is hard. Like I always tell people now, like if you can start off, like buckle down that first year to just have a good base. And then you can kind of play around with it. But that was really hard to kind of crawl out of that.
No doubt.
Another thing that is kind of interesting. Of course, I went to a primarily white or predominantly white college. So trying to identify with people that look like me. I find that schools like that, I'm not sure if this is the same in Virginia Tech, but we were very self-segregated. So you find the Black people hang out with the Black people, Asians over there with the Asians. So it ended up being very self-segregated, and there were some issues that occurred because of that. So I like the fact that I was able to be with my group, and there was many things I could do with my group. But it's not as mixed and commingled as people think. You might be commingled in your classes, but not that didn't always happen.
You didn't have any issues though with racism like we see in those movies like Higher.
No, it didn't get to that extent, that overt racism type thing. It wasn't that overt at all. Not when I was there. But there was always those undertones. There's always things that happen. Not specifically to me that in my mind that I can think of that happened to me specifically, but there are always those undertones there.
Going back for a second, it just hit me as you were talking. You mentioned that first semester and how you had to get your grades right and you had to come out of it. Knowing your mother the way I do, and also how you described her early in this interview, how your mom and dad were. What was that phone? Because we didn't have cell phones. There wasn't no texting.
No.
It was letters and phone calls, pay phones, pages were kind of being phased out. So what was that call? What was that call like?
man, that's a scary phone call to make. Like you're like, oh Lord, because that's the first thing they ask. How's school going? So I got to be like, well, I got a D on this paper. Like that was a horrifying thing to be able to. Plus, I didn't want to disappoint them. So it was hard. So I was very honest with them. They always encouraged me to communicate. So I always told them the truth about what was going on. And of course, it was like, you got to buckle down. I got the lecture. I knew I had to get the lecture. The good thing is I wasn't there in their person. I was over the phone, so I could be like, so I got the lectures. Because but they got me in shape. Because the thing is, I didn't want to. That wasn't me. Like I felt bad about getting those types of grades, and I knew there was things that I could do to make it better. And it was 100% in my control to be able to do that. Talk to the teachers, talk to your TAs, go study. Go over things. Make sure you ask questions. I mean, all those things. But it's sometimes overwhelming because UVA is also a big school. Yes, so we had those big lecture halls. And then a lot of times we also had those breakout TA sections. So those were a little bit easier to be able to communicate with your TA about, but sometimes it's overwhelming and intimidating to speak up in those situations.
Is there anybody, before we move on to your graduate programs, was there anybody, any professor or sometimes we would say this one professor I had or this one TA, was there anybody you remember during your time there that you said, wow, they really had an impact on me? Or was it just a collective group of professors that you just went to their classes and, took their, classes? Was it anybody that stood out?
There was actually a group of professors that I had that were really good. I have a professor, Morgan, who was my history. She was one of my history professors, and she actually helped me with my thesis. And my thesis classes were very small. There were like 12 people in the class, but she actually helped me to get through writing the thesis. She kind of guided me. She ended up being a reference for me when I went to law school. So she actually was a wonderful mentor for me as I was going through. But there was a lot of really good professors, a lot of good TAs who were graduate students who really cared about the students and the classes. They were very helpful. But my professor, Morgan, she was great.
That's really cool. And you mentioned law school. I'm actually watching on ESPN Plus this documentary about the great basketball program and the coach with Central, North Carolina
Yes.
Central. And again, I've always joked, even now, how if you go and visit North Carolina, especially if you grow up in North Carolina, there's no way you shouldn't get an education. I believe there are 8 HBCUs in North
Oh
Carolina
my gosh.
alone,
Yes.
and then
Yes.
you have Duke and North Carolina and Wake Forest, and a lot of them work together.
They
Of
do.
course,
They
East
do.
Carolina. I mean, we can go on and on, but at what point when you're moving through your UVA journey, do you say, okay, of all the things I want to do law school, which in my humble opinion, you have med school and law school. I mean, so you're taking the toughest route. Is when did that resonate with you that okay, now I'm going to take on a new challenge and go into grad school and go into law school?
Well, law school is something that I've always wanted to do. I don't know if people remember like LA Law and all those law shows back in the day, but I used to love them. Back even when I was young, I loved the law school. So my parents, I was like, that's what I want to do. So my parents just encouraged it. They always encouraged me to do that. So my dad would he had logic books. So we would go over logic books when I was like 8 or 9. So I mean, just like they always just encourage it. So it's always something that was been in my mind. And I will tell you, my parents initially were like, well, if you want to have a backup plan, this law school thing, you don't think it's going to work. Maybe you should be a teacher. And I
Mm.
kind of was just like, no, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. I'm going. Now, the interesting thing is, when I told you that my GPA wasn't the greatest initially starting out at UVA, but I maintained. It wasn't like it was terrible. But I didn't get into my top tier law schools.
What were
So
they? What
I
were
wanted
they?
to go to UVA's law,
Okay.
didn't get in to
Yeah.
UVA law. There was a lot of schools I didn't get in or I got waitlisted.
What
So
were some
I
of the other
actually got
ones?
in. Huh?
Jacqueline, was it Georgetown? What were some of the other ones? What were some of the
Oh
other
yeah,
ones?
oh yeah. Georgetown, UNC Chapel Hill, I got waitlisted at. Where else did I apply to? William and Mary. I
Mm.
think I got waitlisted there. So I was just running into roadblocks for myself. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like maybe this is not going to work out for me. Maybe this is not where I'm supposed to be. And I got into North Carolina Central and West Virginia.
West
So
Virginia.
I was like, yeah. So I actually I visited both. Each one of them had like a weekend thing that I could go and visit. And I was just like, I don't know. Like I just was like, I don't know. Maybe I should just wait. Like maybe this is not for me. Um, but I ended up like, if my mom was like, if this is what you want to do, like, you have the opportunity to do it now.
No
So
doubt.
at North Carolina, I have family. I'm originally from North Carolina.
Mhm.
So my grandmother lived in Raleigh. North Carolina Central was right there in Durham. So I was like, okay. And I can tell you that's probably one of the best decisions I've ever made is to go to North Carolina Central
No
for law school.
question.
It was no question a great education. Um, I loved it there. Met great people who are doing really big things down in North Carolina and all over the world. Like, yeah, it was the best decision.
No doubt. And look, I don't know why I've never asked you this before, even before the interview and before Victory Life. You being a lawyer before you became a judge, and even when you were studying law, you ever watch these shows now, or even as you were a lawyer, a county attorney, and be like, "Oh, that would never happen." Like Power and all these things. Like,
Oh yeah, all the time. Even as a lawyer, you'd be like, that would never happen in real life. They got to add some drama to
yeah, I
it.
watch these things, and in our time, we're going to talk about here in a minute. Our time together in many courtrooms when I worked alongside you as
Oh
a
yeah.
social worker.
I will tell you though, people try some of that stuff too. They'll see it in Law and Order or something, and they'll try to in court now. So
Yeah, yeah.
don't
It's
work.
just crazy. It's just I see stuff like that would never happen. So Central is a beautiful school, and you mentioned your time there and how much you learned. But again, law school is no joke. Um,
Ooh.
what is the schedule like as far as I know it's a lot of meticulous learning and a lot of information you have to retain and understand. I've always found it amazing because whether it's carpentry or electrical engineering or law, something I'm not great at, something I can't do, I see how the work people like yourself put in. how much studying and reading and analyzing, I mean, just talk about the workload and how much you had to give up to.
Yeah. It's because it's amazing because there's some people that do law school part-time, or they do school part-time and have
Oh,
families and jobs, and I still don't understand how they do that. That's a lot of juggling that you have to do, because law school is tough. It's very rigorous. You have a full schedule. So like, I don't know, 3-4 classes a day, but you have to prepare for those classes. And they have a thing called the Socratic Method, where anybody could be called on while you're in court, while you're in the class, and they'll go over each case, because what you're learning is usually cases. Those cases that have already been ruled on, and you have to kind of learn from the cases. And if a professor calls on you, he'll constantly just call on you. Well, why did they do this? Why do you think they did that? What happened here? So I mean, you're like grilled, and if you don't know it, oh, that's not good. It's not good.
What happens if you don't know it? What happens if you're like,
they'll embarrass, like they'll first of all, they'll embarrass you in front of everybody. It's like they'll outright, why don't you know this?
oh my God.
What were you doing? Why don't you know this? So next week, guess what? Next week, you're gonna be called on in every day on the class. So every day next week, you better be prepared. And I'm talking about things in the footnotes. And I mean, like, they can ask you anything about a case. So studying and preparing for class was a lot. And I feel like law school just kind of it teaches you a different way to think about things. It teaches you a different way of analyzing things. And so it's a lot of that with every class. So, but it's tough. It's very tough. And then once you get out, like, it's 3 years if you go full time, then they have these tests that you have to take that nobody tells you about. I think people know about the bar exam.
Yeah, that's all I hear about.
There's other tests before the bar exam that you have to take and pass, or you can't be a lawyer either. So it's a lot. They have an ethical. They have an ethical test that you have to take, and you have to get a certain score. Every state has a certain number that you have to pass for this ethics exam that you got to take. And of course, Virginia is always the highest. You got to get the highest score in Virginia. They always have, like, you got to get 100%. Other states is like 60. Virginia is like 100 or whatever. So it's always a little bit higher for them. So it's no joke. Making sure you can study, and then they want you to do all these additional competitions and all those things in law school. So it's tough. It's very tough.
No question. And just for the record, for those that'll see this, and people that are following your legacy, when it comes to law school in a school like Central or other schools in the HBCU format, it's no different, is it, than if you're at Georgetown? Like, this misconception that, oh yeah, well, you went to Central. It's just as difficult, correct?
Yeah, and I hate that, because I think that HBCUs get a bad rap. Like, you don't get as good a quality of an education as if you were to go to a PWI school. And and that goes through a lot of things. I mean, that's how people have been conditioned, and that is completely false. I got a great education, and the reason why I know I got a great education is when I came back to actually practice, I'm like whipping these other people. Like, I know things these other people don't know. I'm responding to things, and they're like, oh. So I mean, like, I know I'm getting a way, a better education than I think that I would have gotten anywhere else. I mean, it was just I'm going to dispel that myth that you're not getting a good enough education if you go somewhere like that. And the graduate school wasn't even predominantly Black. It literally was.
I know.
It literally was 50-50. Like, it was just as many other ethnicities there as it was Black.
Yeah.
So that was good.
Yeah. People don't realize that. And real quick before we move on from Central, did you get a chance, because of that rigorous workload and all the stuff you had to know? And I know grad school is much different from undergrad. Did you get a chance to experience the HBCU culture, the step shows, the parties?
Yeah.
Okay.
You gotta work hard, play hard. Yes, and the good thing is I actually ended up making a lot of really good friends in law school. So that also went to Central undergrad. So they were able to take me to homecomings, which homecoming at a HBCU is way different than a homecoming at UVA. Yes. So going to homecomings, parties, Like, yeah, just experiencing their culture going on campus, because campus is right there, the undergrad campus. So I was able to experience those things. And so that was really nice. It was getting the best of both worlds for me.
Yeah.
You also talked about like the proximity of it. So we were able to take classes at Duke and UNC Chapel Hill.
Mm.
So I actually ended up, I didn't finish taking it because I didn't need to, but I was taking a class at UNC Chapel Hill for a while. So I mean, their campus is great, and I got to experience a little bit of what's going on at UNC. I got to experience a little bit at Duke. Went to NC State for a couple things. Like it was just nice to be in proximity of all those things. Football
Yeah.
games, basketball games. Yeah, so it was really nice to be able to be in all those areas. And I actually debated about staying in North Carolina versus coming back to Virginia.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
We almost moved. I think you know this
Hmm.
in '05. We almost moved down to Wake County because there was at that time a lot of people moving, but then at the same time, that's when the housing market, stock market
Yeah.
crashed and everything. Ended up staying here, but I was born in North Carolina.
Right. I know. It's like it's a lot of us North Carolinians around here.
So, but you ended up coming back, right? So you end
I
up
came
you
back.
passed the bar. And then let
Yeah.
me just say this: I remember like it was yesterday when you came because I was a few years ahead of you. I was working with Prince William County Social Services foster care and adoption team, and at that time, this was 20 years ago. You had the Penny Georges, the Jennifer Zaries. You had county attorneys that had been there a little while. You had GALs, garden ad litems, judges who had been there a while. And then all of a sudden, you had an influx of people coming in different capacities throughout the county.
Right.
And here comes Jackie Lucas, young, energetic attorney, just coming back home. And I just remember you walking in the courtroom and just walking around the courthouse with confidence, but it was a respectful confidence. And you had all this energy, and you came and you hit the ground running.
Hmm.
And you never backed down from any other male attorneys. You kept us on our toes. I remember, let me see if I can get a prop. I remember working with you, and you would pull out the statute and all these books in your office. And this is not the statute. This is something for me. I'm a therapist. You would pull out these big books and you say, okay, let me look. And you would open it up and put the sticky notes. But we would go through cases, the cases for an hour. We would use like you say, hey, make sure you eat because we're gonna go through this. But you came in and you demanded respect and you were a hard worker. But let me ask you this. When you came back, you're an attorney and you're in the county, and this is Prince William. This is a very diverse county now. But as you mentioned earlier in this interview, Gainesville, Prince William, Woodbridge, Manassas was not always that way.
Hmm.
Was it hard being a woman and also being a woman of color to get your respect and come in the county and in a field that men pretty much dominate?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the interesting thing is, I did not necessarily feel it from the local judges or anything.
Mm-hmm.
I actually felt it more so in the county. There was a lot of white males that were in management positions and things like that. And when I would walk into a meeting, and somebody from the county attorney's office is going to be here, and I'd walk in, and I'm the person from the county attorney's office is going to be there. I got a lot of little snubs and looks, and I think questioning what my advice is. A lot of people trying to backtrack and try to get advice from other people from my office. So because I think they didn't trust me, or and I don't know. A lot of times they keep saying because I looked young, but is it because I looked young or I looked black? I don't know. But so so that was tough. It was tough for me, but I was like, I'm not going to ever let them see me sweat. I'm not going to ever let them see me back down from anything. So I'm always and always have tried to be as prepared as I can be. So when I come in there and I'm able to talk the talk and I'm able to say what I need to say, then all of a sudden they kind of look a little different sometimes because they're like, oh, maybe she does know what she's talking about. But I felt like I've always had to kind of show that. I had to, instead of just automatically getting a sense of respect, I wasn't getting that. It's like I had to show it to get that respect. And that oftentimes would happen with other lawyers in court. Like you have to get their respect. They'll dismiss you. They'll won't acknowledge you. And so you have to kind of demand the respect. And unfortunately, the older generation, it took a little bit of time. Took a little bit more time to make sure that they saw me, really saw me. So I'm glad that I looked like I was confident, because I think in the inside, I'm just like, oh my God, oh my gosh. But I didn't want it to show on the outside, because I had all of you all too. Like, you all are looking and watching and seeing what I'm doing too.
Oh yeah.
So I think I can't look crazy or weak when I got my clients looking at me too.
Yeah, yeah. I love working with you back in the day. You, Deborah, Cheryl, it was a great crew. And it was
Yeah.
fun too, because I would go in there and be at the table with you because you represented the department. And I'd be like, Jackie, let me talk real quick. You were like, and I'd be like, no, my guys. And I would stand up because I'm not a lawyer, but it was kind of cool. But all jokes aside, you did look confident and you earned the respect of other people in the department and throughout the county, whether it was CPS or treatment, prevention, foster care, also the police department. I mean, because people don't realize the county attorney, they are the heartbeat of the county when it comes to legalities and different situations, not just with domestic
Right,
disputes, but also, it could be child support, law enforcement. There's a lot of
right,
things. Y'all
right.
wear a lot of different hats. Um,
Mhm.
Let me ask you this though. When you came in, you and I, came in the county around the same time, and there was a lot of seasoned veterans. Who do you remember, or do you want to, shout out now that took you in? Whether it was a judge or two, or somebody even at the county attorney's office, or even a bailiff. Do you remember people that would just talk to you and say, Jackie, just drop little gems on you, or a little mentor you, or give you words of
Yes,
wisdom?
yes, yes, yes. Well, in the county attorney's office, I got to give it up to my girl, Megan
Megan.
Kelly. She was always very supportive, even from the beginning. Um, Continues to be very supportive of me. She's always been very supportive. So, she definitely was very helpful. She was great to lean on, great to go complain to if I needed to complain to anybody. So she was wonderful. Judge Wellington obviously was she was the first African American judge to be appointed to the
Yep.
Juvenile Domestic Relations Court bench. And I know we're going to get to that in a minute.
Hmm.
But she also took me under her wing. Actually, while I was in law school, my dad, who owned a construction company, he actually did work for Judge Wellington at her home. So I knew her before I practiced. So she actually helped me get my first summer job as a legal intern. So she was helping me even before then, but she would always kind of guide me, give me tips on what to do, what not to do. Judge Rollins, Terkesa Rollins, she's now a new judge, but she was an attorney.
Yep.
I remember when she first saw me walk into the courthouse, she was, hey, you an attorney here? Yes. Let me hook you up with the Black Attorneys Association. And, so she hooked me up to the other organizations in the area, because Prince William County, it's getting a lot better, but we still only have a handful of Black attorneys that work there. And so that actually she helped link me to these organizations where there's more Black attorneys in Arlington and Fairfax and Alexandria. So we were able to get together, and they have mentors there, Judge Lee, Judge Alston. So there was a bunch of mentors that I was able to get through that connection. So there was that I'm grateful for those people who kind of helped guide me through those times. So that was great.
Yeah, that is really good, and it's good to let people know and remind people you never get to the mountaintop or successful
Right.
without help. You're not going to get there without help, especially in a job as an attorney. I mean, I learned. I'm a learner. I like to watch and I like to respect people's crafts, and I know when talking to you on a personal and professional level, you ladies and gentlemen put in a lot of hours. I mean, and you
Yeah.
carry a lot of cases. Y'all always had like all those folders. Let me see if I can see. You always had all these folders and binders, and the little carrying case.
Yep. Yep.
And you had to know, and you would have different things on different dockets. So I thought it was pretty cool just to see the growth and also the work you put in. You mentioned Judge Wellington, who I had the distinct, honor of being in her courtroom many times for, foster care, for probation cases, for even my business, my practice now, Vicktory Life. Um, just talk about what she means to Prince William County and what she means to you, because essentially, am I correct in saying when you were named in your judgeship, you replaced her essentially?
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. She left a legacy for me, for me.
yeah,
Um, So I essentially took over when I started in July 1st. I took over her place.
Mm-hmm.
So she, as I said before, was the first African American female judge to be appointed to JNDR. First African American, period. The first African American female, and so she obviously has laid out a path for all of us to follow as the first in the county for doing that. But she's always shown a lot of respect. She always demanded the best. You know this. Like you couldn't come to her courtroom with with just nothing. You had to make sure that you were prepared for whatever you did. So she demanded that that amount of respect, hard work and dedication to what you're doing. And so she cared about all the families and all the situations that came before her. So so she, I think, definitely had a huge impact on the citizens of Prince William County, a positive impact in trying to get the best for all the people that came before her. She also would, she did a lot of talks, a lot of like presentations that she used to do for the bar, for the judges. It was a lot dealing with like equality and taking into those biases into consideration when you're in court. So that's really important. People, your experiences affect the decisions that you make. And so everybody has these biases. And so being able to recognize that you have those biases and being able to make decisions despite that, being able to put that aside and being able to make decisions just based on what's in front of you can be very difficult, but it has to be done. Like you want to be as fair as possible. So she's always, I think, have given back to the legal community in those ways, as far as making sure that people understand that and guardian ad litem. She's done trainings for them to make sure they understand what their role is supposed to be for taking care of kids and doing what's in their best interests. So so that, I'm very thankful for her for all those things. So specifically for me, she has no problems with calling me out about anything. So if I said something that was out of the way, I may have worn something that she thought was a little inappropriate. Believe me, when the cases were over, she'd be like, approach the bench. And she would absolutely tell me, now that wasn't right what you just said right there. Like, don't ever do that. So really? I'm just like, oh, okay. So, and then when she was very instrumental for me in becoming a judge. I mean, she's the one that encouraged me. She was one of the last people I talked to about, like, should I do this? I wasn't sure if I should even put my name in the ring. And she encouraged me to do it. And she gave me all the confidence to be able to say, you know what, do it. Do what you got to do, and supported me. Yeah.
I knew it. I knew it from day one. I told you throughout your professional and personal career, I knew this is where you're going. I used to tell you all the time, this was going to happen for you. But with that being said, as excited and proud as I am that you hold this judgeship, at the end of the day, that was a big step. Like you weren't like, because I know, but even if you've never been in a courtroom or never really been in that situation, from just watching television, Hollywood, even the news, you're talking about making serious decisions. And people don't realize, because upstairs circuit court, we talk, you think about those trials and hearings and juries, but people don't realize in juvenile and domestic relations court, there's a lot of serious issues we're addressing. We're talking about child abuse and child support and just all types of domestic situations that affect tons of families. Even termination of parental rights, when you have to tell a parent they can no longer have custody and be involved in the child's life. These aren't, playing Uno, reverse back to me, skip to you. We're talking about serious decisions. So, when you made that step, how long did you take to process it and say, okay, this is what I'm going to do?
It took a long time. It took a while for me to realize that this is something that I want to do, because number one, you got to realize the journey to even get there. Like once you even decide to do it, it's no guarantee that you're going to get it, right? So there's a whole process to even trying to be a judge. You got to put yourself out there. You got to, press the flesh. You got to make sure people know that you're trying to run, why you're trying to run. You have to know the legislators in Richmond, because they're ultimately the ones that choose the judges. So you got to get a little political and getting to know these people and making sure they know who you are and what you stand for. So there's a lot to it. And I'm not a political person. So I was like, I don't even know where to begin to do all those things. But then once you even get that job or, decide you're going to do it, now you have to realize the responsibility that you have with being a judge. And that's like this awesome thing. I was actually encouraged to run years ago, to put my name in. And I felt I was too young. I wasn't ready for that. Like, I just didn't think I was ready for that type of responsibility. So it takes you a while to kind of wrap your mind around the fact that, you know what, this is something I can do. I had to be comfortable with saying, okay, I think I can do this. So once and again, that's talking to other people, talking to Judge Wellington, talking to some of my friends about, is this something I really should do? And then it's like, once I decided to do it, it was like 100%, I'm all in. Let me do what I got to do to secure this position. It still can be a little frightening at times, because I want to make sure I'm making the best decision possible. So I don't take it lightly. I try to tell everybody all the time, I want to be as fair as possible. I take my time in listening to everybody. I want them to make sure that they've been heard. If I need to go take a recess and go back and look at some things, talk to some of my colleagues, that's what I do, just to make sure that I'm doing something. I'm doing what I feel is the best thing. And so, because I don't take it lightly. I mean, you're affecting people's lives. I mean, custody cases, support, you make financial things. I deal with criminal cases, so I'm putting people in jail. Dealing with people's liberty.
Oh, wow.
And so it's a very serious job, and we handle a lot of different things. And so of course, I have to weigh on it. It's stressful. I think the first couple months, I used to come home and just crash because I was just mentally exhausted. Like, I just was thinking about everything, reading everything. So I was just done the first couple of months. It was hard.
Yeah.
So but I love it. I love it. Now that I've done it for a while, I'm getting kind of used to it. It's good.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah. You talk about decisions, you talk about crashing, and just the work that goes into it. Do you guys have a way? Do you? Because we don't know. Do you have a team, like staff meetings you consult with one another, or is it you pretty much on an island? As far as you.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I have two clerks and a deputy that are assigned to me. And that's it. It's just us. That's my team. I have nobody to do research. Nobody, like, I'm that person. I'm the person that does the research. I'm the person that does all those things. So so we have 5 different courtrooms in JNDR. Each courtroom deals with a different area of the law: criminal, child support, custody. So every day I do something different, and it's just me and my team. So technically we can just be on our own little island and go to every day. We go to a different courtroom and do our own thing. But I think what's good is, especially on my floor, we try to make every effort to confer with each other, to make sure that we're all on the same page. You don't want anybody judge shopping. So, this judge does this and this judge does that. So we make sure we confer. We have meetings, I think every couple months, we have an admin meeting where we all sit down and talk about certain things. So we try very hard to make sure that we still are cohesive. But you can certainly be on your own little island and do your own thing.
Yeah. And just to let people know watching this interview, because I learned the process by watching you, it was educational for me. Because most people in the civilian world, we don't know what goes into being a judge. But you beat out, so to speak, not so much it was competition, but there are people who've been trying to be judges, not just in our county, but throughout VA for a long time, right?
Mm-hmm.
So and you were named a judge along with the other gentleman. Help me remember his name.
Carlos Flores, the boy. So he's the first Hispanic appointed to Prince William County.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the good thing was, it was 2 openings that were available for last year, and so I can't remember the total amount of people that were seeking the judgeship, but I think it was probably 8 or 9 people. Wow. And several of those people had put their name in before. So this was my first time putting my name in. And to be honest, I thought, I'm not going to get it this time. These people have done it so many times. It's probably their turn to get it. But I, again, put in all the work, and I had a lot of help doing that. Like there's a lot of people that wrote letters on my behalf, who, talked to other people on my behalf. I mean, I got voted in to the bar association. I mean, there was a lot of people that helped me get to that position, get to this position. So there was, so yeah, it's kind of amazing to me that I was the one chosen. It's still kind of, sometimes I have to pinch myself, like, wow, Carlos
Yeah.
and I were the ones that was chosen. But what I think is good about what's going on with the Virginia legislature is that they're changing. I mean, they're now recognizing how important diversity is. So there has been a change throughout the state in ensuring that people of color have been appointed to these positions. We got to have people that look like us in these positions.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, that's now having qualified candidates that also fit that bill is great. So I think the bench is going to change. No longer these older white men that are getting appointed. You're getting some younger people of color, and they have different ideas and different ways of doing things. Now with COVID, there was a switch to like virtual hearings and having things done electronically, which some of the older judges had real problems doing. Some of them still
Yeah.
don't do it. Whereas, Carlos and I, it's not a thing at all. Like, we love it. Just set those up. So just that, it's changing. It's changing.
Yeah. In a lot of ways, you and Carlos both, and specifically you, this is your legacy spotlight. You're carrying the torch for a lot of women. And, when I posted your announcement almost a year ago, before we decided to do this interview, I posted, and I got a platform, so I know I have followers, but I could, some people aren't celebrated. It was very heartwarming and very honorable to see when I posted your announcement, because some people didn't know because COVID had just hit. And then
Right.
when I posted on Facebook and other places on Instagram that spring, you're talking about the page, my post got flooded with likes. And does it feel good to be so? I mean, again, I know you are very humble and you can't get caught in the moment, but it has to be very surreal and humbling as well as appreciative to have so many people, attorneys and judges and friends and classmates that celebrated, that really felt like you were winning for them as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, how does that feel?
It's an amazing feeling. Like, it feels really, really good. The best things are, I get sometimes people come into court and they're just like, "You're my judge? Are you my judge?" And I was like, "Yes." And they're like, a smile comes on their face, and that's like, well, that don't mean I'm going to rule in your favor. And I don't even think they care. But the fact is that they see me, and some have actually said it's so good to see somebody like you on the bench, and it just makes my heart just it's just
Oh,
such
it's
a
good.
nice feeling, to know that, yes, it's so important to have somebody that looks like me on the bench. I mean, it's so important. Like, even if I don't rule in their favor, they know that at least, I may have considered what they had to say, or at least, I know where they're coming from or something. That identifier is what's there. And so that's so nice. Being a woman,
Yeah.
being an African American, I mean, all of that is always good. So it's really nice. It's just,
Mhm.
I don't know, it's just an amazing feeling.
It's a great thing to see. And I only have, Jackie, a few more questions. This has been
Okay.
a lot of fun, but I do want to ask you this. Um, in regards to, as you move forward and being a judge, and you talk about UVA and Central and all the work you put in, um, you can't go back in time. But just what is a life lesson you learned that you can say, okay, this is a mistake I made, or this is something that I want to make sure, I continue to get better at, or what I've learned from it. When you talk about your career and just your journey as being a professional, a woman, for me, I've always said, if I can go back, I would appreciate the time with this or these people more, or I would make sure I would time for self-care. For you, what is it so far?
Hmm. I think, for me, it is appreciating the moment. Sometimes I'm a big about setting lists and those things and checking things off.
Mhm.
Like, I've done this, I've done that. Okay, so I've done this. Let me go ahead and go to the next step, instead of really appreciating the moment. You know how they always talk about how kids want to grow up so fast. They trying to be grown so quick. And then you realize later, like, yeah, I should have really, I really should have really appreciated all those moments. Now I had a really good time at a lot of places, and did a lot of things, but I really wish sometimes I would have really appreciated some of those moments, and just taking it all in versus just trying to rush through some things just to get to the next spot. So that'd be one of the life lessons I would learn. Sometimes and this is possibly more so on a personal note, sometimes we get caught up, especially in relationships and something like that, and get caught up in some things like that, and that derails you a little bit. So just for me to stay focused on what is good for me, that also would always be something that I would be like, I need to make sure I focus on me.
No doubt, no doubt. Well, we've come to the final question, and it's one I ask all my guests to be honest and open about. I mentioned a second ago, you carried a torch for a lot of people. You've been given a responsibility, not so much like you didn't want it. This is what you embrace. This is your journey. You're a judge, but you're so much more than that. So many people look up to you and respect you professionally and personally. A lot of people have a great deal of admiration for you. But there are a lot of young Jackie Lucases right now. I have two daughters, and they watch my legacy spotlights. Your mother has that same glow and legacy, and that she's a leader like you. It's a gift you both been given, and you carry it well. But at the same time, what would you tell not just young women, but young people right now that want to be in the field of law, or they want to be successful like Jackie Lucas? Because you speak to people, you're part of different committees, you've done a lot of things in Prince William County, community service stuff. What would you share with them as they're in their journey right now? Maybe they feel like, well, you know what, it's hard for me. I'm a girl, I'm a young lady, or I'm in Manassas, I live in a townhouse, or I live in Section 8 housing. What would you tell them to push through to make sure they stay the course based on the life lessons you experienced so far? What would you share with them?
Well, number one, never give up on whatever dream you have, whether that is to go into law or medicine or whatever your field that you want to go into it. Whatever you have a passion for, you want to make sure that you continue with that. And I told you when I was young, being a lawyer is something that I've wanted to do and something that I maintain. And I'm blessed to have parents that supported that. But sometimes you don't have people that are very supportive around you. But if you still want to see certain things happen in your life, continue to go after that. Continue to maintain that dream. Do things that will help you get there. So my thing is, you always want to be prepared. So things don't always land on your lap. Like, you always sometimes hear about, all of a sudden they famous. No, it wasn't all of a sudden they famous. You had to put in some work to get that done. You had to study after hours. You maybe had to read an extra book that dealt with it that wasn't assigned in your class. I mean, you might have to go and meet some people or get to know some other things that happen. Go to the library, look online, see what else is going on. So sometimes you have to get ready, and to get ready means you have to prepare. You gotta keep looking out for yourself and seeing what's out there and taking those risks. Sometimes it's very scary to take the risk. Sometimes I was, very hesitant about even putting my name in for the judgeship, but I'm so thankful that I did. So take a risk on yourself. So continue to maintain that dream, do the work that you need to do to get it done, and then take the risk to get it done. So, because sometimes I see especially some of these young ladies today on social media, and I'm just like, oh my God. And some kids that come into my courtroom, and I'm like, you more worried about how long your eyelashes are and what kind of, your hair is, than what you need to be focusing in on is going to school and checking in. So, so sometimes these kids just need a little bit of guidance, a little bit of mentoring. They need people like you, Vic, to be in their lives to kind of guide them a little bit. But they're not lost. They just need a little bit of focus. So hopefully they'll continue to do what they need to do to get to where they need to be.
Well said. Well said. And I always tell you, I appreciate you. This has been great, man. And
thank you.
I can't wait for everyone to see this. So, want to thank everybody that supports Jackie Lucas. Your honor, by the way, if you ever seen
I should have came on with my robe. That's what I should have had.
But no, this has been a lot of fun, and I want to thank you again. You inspire a lot of people, and I appreciate our friendship. It's a special bond. I appreciate all the things you're doing in the community and the county. And to all the people that love and support Jackie, thank you for watching this interview. Please subscribe to the Vicktory Life YouTube page. We have other great interviews and other things like that. And you can also hit us up at the website to get Vicktory Life paraphernalia. But definitely continue to support Jackie and all the great things she's doing and all the great ladies we have in this show and that come on. So like I say, every episode, no matter where you go, no matter what you do, make sure you have a positive impact and you leave a great legacy. Thank you, Jackie. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.